were both just 17 years old, going for a bike ride in the quiet town of Cranford, New Jersey, when evil struck. A black SUV targeting both girls struck them and killed best friends Maria Niotis and Isabella Salas. The SUV then sped away. Investigators quickly tracked down the person they believe was behind the wheel, another 17-year-old. Who was apparently the nephew of a police chief from a neighboring town. The chief has come out in full support of the arrest. And now everyone is wondering and speculating as to why the driver would do it. Friends and family have told local media that the driver had stalked Maria for months, making it all look like a potential premeditated murder rather than a hit-and-run accident. Tonight, we have all the latest in this tragic story. But first, Sean Diddy Combs, once a titan of music and fashion, now stands as a symbol of collapse. His trial in Manhattan unfolded like a modern tragedy. Lavish parties and industry dominance replaced by sordid testimony of coercion, abuse, violence, and exploitation. Witness after witness described a world built on control, where promises of stardom blurred into nightmares of manipulation. The defense argued fame made him a target, but prosecutors painted a man consumed by power and untouchable arrogance. Then the shocking verdict, a resounding loss for prosecutors as the jury rejected their most serious claims and found Combs guilty of the least serious charges of transporting individuals for prostitution. Today is sentencing day, and the question for the judge, will he sentence Combs for the conduct he was convicted of or for his other deplorable conduct, which did not result in a conviction? Tonight, we are live with the latest. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. We're going to talk about the sentencing of Sean Combs, but I want to begin the discussion and talk about a popular celebrity who you may see in a lot of commercials and cameos, former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson. If you think of Mike Tyson today, he's sort of a beloved guy. You know, he's getting a little bit older. And, you know, pops up in movies sometimes. You'll see him on TV. He'll be on talk shows. And he's a bit of a character, but generally very, very popular, which, from my perspective, when I think about it, it's fascinating because this is a guy who sort of reinvented himself. Because if you go back in time and you go back to 1992, that's when Mike Tyson became a convicted rapist. He went to prison. There may be some people who don't remember, some people who weren't alive back then, who may have no idea. But Mike Tyson is a convicted rapist. So what's the moral of that story? I guess, one, you can somewhat redeem yourself, reinvent yourself, and the public, when you're a celebrity, may at some point forgive and maybe forget your past. I mean, it's happened for Mike Tyson. So now let's talk about another popular celebrity, Diddy, right? Think about this climb that he had and how he was loved not only by the public who's buying his music and his clothing and, you know, following everything he does. This guy was loved by other celebrities. Everybody wanted to be in with Diddy. It was like the cool thing to do, the cool place to be. At a Diddy party or invited by Diddy. All the talk shows would love when he would come on. Everything about him was just cool, right? I'm using an old word, right? Cool, but it was, right? And now we find he's a convicted felon. Today is sentencing day. And the question is, because he's gonna be a free man at some point. He's got many more years to live. And one of the things I'm wondering is, will he be able to reinvent himself? Will the public forgive? Will they forget at some point? You know, for 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, what are people going to be saying about Diddy? We don't know that, but we know what happened today. So let's get right to Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's on the ground in New York City with the latest from today's significant, dramatic, and I think to a certain extent an unpredictable outcome. Everybody, I mean, the defense, the prosecution were in completely different places going into this sentencing. The public, I think, is up in the air about what would be justice in this case. So tell us about the sentence, Kelly, and tell us about the reaction.
Well, hi there, Vinny. So it definitely was unpredictable. As we sat there awaiting the judge to impose the sentence, it was just before 5 o'clock. We were in an all-day hearing, and the tone of it, at least the tone from the judge, how he was coming across, it seemed as if he was going to impose a pretty heavy sentence. So we had the prosecutors on one hand saying that Sean Diddy Combs deserves more than 11 years behind bars. Defense counsel on the other end saying about 14 months. You had the probation department in the middle of that saying no more than 7 years. And then the judge finally handed down that sentence, sentencing Sean Diddy Combs to 4 years and 2 months behind bars. No real reaction from Sean Diddy Combs, Vinny, when that sentence was handed down. But we did get strong reaction from his defense counsel just a short time ago because, Vinny, they just made their way outside the federal courthouse around 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to play that for you in just a bit. But talking about what the judge had to say when he was imposing his sentence on Sean Diddy Combs, he told him that your children now are going to have a chance to see, and you're going to be able to show them what real accountability looks like. So that's what he told Sean Diddy Combs as he was handing down that sentence. He also had some strong words for him because he said, you abused Cassie Ventura and Jane physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And we are not going to be standing for people who emotionally abuse women and exploit them. So strong words from him as he was handing down the sentence to Sean Diddy Combs. Defense counsel, Vinny, we caught up with them right after that sentence when they made their way outside the courtroom finally after conversing with their client, Sean. We did ask them how Sean was feeling. They did not want to express any feelings or comments about that. But here's what they had to say about the sentence.
This is a very bad day. There is a human being now in custody for 50 months.
Diddy was just sharing.
Based upon conduct that a jury heard, the jury resolved, and the jury rejected. It is really a sad day for everybody.
I don't feel that way.
We are planning to appeal. We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases to appeal. The strongest basis is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion. And I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that that is unconstitutional. Yep. We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean, and so we are planning to appeal.
What Mark Agnifilo was saying there is that a jury did not find him guilty of sex trafficking or the racketeering conspiracy charges, and the judge acted as that 13th juror, Vinny, who we did not select. So they are very serious about an appeal. They will put a proposal forth on Monday to the judge. This is just in regard to where they feel is the best facility for Sean Combs to serve out that sentence.
And to me, this is what this was about, and we were wondering how it was going to play out. Was he being sentenced for what he was convicted of, or was he being sentenced for the other conduct that he was not convicted of at this trial, but there was evidence of it? From your perspective, your perspective and analysis, how did the judge get to 4 years and 2 months? Was it because of he transported people for prostitution, or was it everything else that we heard about?
Vinny, the judge made it very clear that he was sentencing him on his convictions, the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. But he said, because he has wide discretion in sentencing, that he is able to take into account the relevant conduct. He made it very clear that jurors acquit on charges, and they acquitted him on those most serious charges, but they don't acquit on conduct. Those were the judge's words, Vinny. And so that's how he's fashioning his sentence. He said he's able to take all of that into account. And when you listen to Mark Agnifilo there, he says that he mentioned coercion no less than a dozen times. So that's one of the things that they're going to appeal, Vinny. Did he fashion a sentence based on the coercion, the acquitted conduct, or is it based on what he was convicted of? So it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with in their appeal.
Yeah, and it could be a significant question that could impact cases from this point forward, because the federal system a little bit different than others, you know, in the way prosecutors and judges have a little more leeway in sentencing. Okay, let's talk about the victims. Were the victims there? Did they speak?
Vinny, so no, the prosecutor was the one that spoke. The victim submitted several letters, victim impact statements that the prosecutor would read parts of during her argument. The judge also mentioned words that were in some of those letters. Mia, who is the former personal assistant of Sean Diddy Combs, she wanted to come today, and she wanted to speak. Defense counsel objected to that. In their letter to the judge, when they wrote their objection, they said that Mia was a liar, that she lied on the stand, that she was not credible, so they objected to her coming today. The judge said that Mia could have spoken, but then she decided not to speak, according to the prosecutor today, in part because of what defense counsel said in that letter, calling her a liar, saying that she felt bullied by defense counsel. So no victims came and spoke here, but they did submit several letters saying that Sean Combs had a dramatic and a horrible impact on their life.
Okay, how about the sex workers? Because arguably they're victims in this as well, right? If you're transporting them for these purposes, you know, usually when you transport them, you're the one that's going to engage in the conduct with them. That's not the case here with Diddy. Did they submit letters? Were they a part of any of this?
They received several letters from many victims of Sean Diddy Combs. They weren't here today as well, but I can tell you outside the courthouse, there were a lot of people that were talking about the sex workers. And that's one of the things that was discussed by the judge today, Vinny, in which he said that sex workers, Sean Diddy Combs is wanting to say that he just paid these people for their time. He said, I reject that argument. They were not being paid for their time, and basically was indicating, of course, they are sex workers and victims as well of Sean Diddy Combs. And Sean did address all of the victims that he said that he impacted their lives. When he made his statement, I know we're going to talk about that, but when he gave his statement, Vinny, he was very emotional, and he did talk about all of the victims, although he didn't use that word.
Interesting. All right, so tell us more about what Diddy said today in court. His opportunity to speak, he didn't testify, so this was it.
Yeah, this was his opportunity to speak, give a statement in allocution. We had gotten word that he was going to speak. And then as the judge was making all of his comments and remarks today, there was kind of a feeling that, wow, maybe Sean Diddy Combs actually is not going to make a statement in allocution, because it didn't seem like it was going the best for defense counsel. But he then did. When he began to speak, he first of all gathered all of his papers together. He put his glasses on, Vinny, and he was going through them, wanted to make sure he was going to be addressing the court properly. And then he stood up and he started to say, I am sorry. And he apologized then to Cassie Ventura as well as Jane, saying that he is so sorry for getting them involved in the mess of his life. Then he turned around and he addressed his children, talking about how he failed them. He became extremely emotional when he was talking about them. Then he addressed his mother, put his hands on top of his head when he was addressing his mother, turned around and said, I'm sorry. And then we heard her say, I'm sorry, back to Sean Diddy Combs. So it was extremely emotional when he was giving his statement and allocution to the judge. And he was talking about how he also was thankful to the jury for acquitting him on the most serious conduct.
And the statement that he made, was this a written statement he was reading, or was this something that he was speaking from, straight from his mind, off the cuff, presumably from his heart?
Vinny, he submitted a statement to the judge, but this kind of went off of it a bit. And he did appear as if he was speaking directly from the heart and talking about his behavior, how it was disgusting, and he was very embarrassed about his behavior, how he's thrown away his life, and he was asking the judge to give him a chance, to take a look at him as a father and give him a chance to go out there. He talked about his time when he was, or his time in prison, how he has been working with other inmates, and during the defense counsel's presentation today, they put forth and played a really long video showing all of the good that they are talking about Sean Diddy Combs has done for the community, but the judge made clear in his sentencing that no amount of good can make up for the bad.
All right, you mentioned that Diddy made a plea as a father. He turned to his children. Did any of his children speak today?
Vinny, they did. They all walked to the podium at the same time. 6 of his 7 children, they were holding one another as they were beginning to speak. They had an extremely hard time, many of them breaking down at times as they delivered statements on behalf of their father, just talking about how much they miss him, how they're scared. That's something else Sean Diddy Combs said. My children are scared. I'm scared. So they talked about that, being fatherless as well as motherless. They talked about that because some of the children's mother, Kim Porter, had passed away years ago. And so they just pleaded with the judge to let their father come home. So a lot of people spoke on Sean Diddy Combs' behalf. And actually, Vinny, we do have someone who spoke during the sentencing hearing today, and we could bring him in now and just talk to him briefly about his reaction to the sentence and what he did talk about. This is Giovanni Cyrus, and he was one of the many people who spoke on behalf of Sean Diddy Combs. Giovanni, thanks for joining us. What was your reaction to the sentence handed down by the judge today?
I think the sentence reflects the justice system at work. I respect that process. My concern is with the individual, what they do while they're incarcerated, and how they get involved in the community to promote positive change.
Giovanni, you were asked to speak on Sean Combs' behalf. Briefly tell us what you said to the judge.
Well, I urge the court to consider Mr. Combs' rehabilitative efforts with the programs he's teaching in the jail to other individuals like himself, and that our organization is interested in working with Mr. Combs to work with our vulnerable populations as a deterrence.
Giovanni, your program is called, the nonprofit's called Reentry One. And so one of the things that was talked about by the prosecution today was how Sean Diddy Combs had set up speaking engagements for next week, thinking that he was going to get out. The prosecutor did not like that. That was a surprise to all of us in court when we heard that he had set up speaking engagements. But then when defense counsel got its chance, they talked about these are not speaking engagements, these would be teaching engagements, and they were set up to keep Sean busy if he did get out.
That is correct. That's the true intentions of it. And as I mentioned, we wanted Mr. Combs to work with our vulnerable populations as a way of getting him to tell his story and the mistakes he's made as a deterrence to our younger and young adult populations.
Giovanni, thank you so much. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
But Vinny, interesting day here to say the least. Again, I haven't seen a sentencing hearing quite like this to last all day, and the big production by defense counsel with the video and all the attorneys speaking on behalf of Sean Diddy Combs. 5 of them spoke, getting very emotional at times. They have gotten to know Sean Combs very well. They talked about how he was one person at one time in his life when he was addicted to drugs, but now he's a completely different person, and this is the real Sean Diddy Combs. The prosecutor on the other side, though, said of all the 5 defense counsels that spoke, only one mentioned the victims and said Cassie Ventura wanted it. So obviously the prosecution taking a very different approach, which they should, to this case, as defense counsel then takes its approach advocating for its client.
Yeah, so 4 years, 2 months, he gets credit for the time he served. So are we looking at about 3 years before he gets out?
Vinny, yeah, so he was arrested last September. And so when you take a look at it, so now we're in October, so time served, so about 3 years. And depending upon how they do it with good time, et cetera, it could be less than that. And then, of course, the appeal is going to be filed as well.
Kelly Craft in New York City. Big day. Great reporting as always. Thank you so much, Kelly. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, get their reaction to today's sentencing, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinny Politan investigates a respected federal agent, a beautiful au pair, and a wife who never saw it coming. What began as a secret affair exploded into a twisted murder plot. Was it seduction, manipulation, or something far more sinister? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinny Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinny Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
4 dead students.
None of it seemed to make any sense.
He was evil.
What devastation.
All I can do is scream.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
We think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror,
yes,
one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Diddy's team not happy with the sentence today. It was 4 years and 2 months. And when you look at it, though, the recommendation by probation, who does a pre-sentence investigation, a pre-sentence report, and a recommendation to the judge, was higher. So the judge went below that and went much less than what prosecutors were asking for, which was 11 years. But the defense was looking for 14 months. So was justice served today? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us is entertainment host Holland Reed, also former law enforcement officer and host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King, and criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud. Great to see everyone tonight. All right, Holland, what are your thoughts about what went down today in New York City? Was justice served?
I would love to say that justice was served. I feel like it's like right down the middle. 4 years still feels like a slap on the wrist after everything we witnessed. I believed everything that happened today in the courtroom was a bit of strategic remorse. I didn't feel, and I have not felt this entire trial, that he is sorry for anything he's actually done. He's gone out of his way to cover up his, bad deeds all the way to the end. And now if you go back and even read his statement, which I've read about 4 times now, he mentions I over 108 times in this statement. And he mentions Cassie 1 time, and I'm sorry to some degree 6 times. So that for me, in addition to what the prosecutor said, the height of hubris, the audacity to have speaking engagements, whatever engagements that he had planned, in the thought that he was not going to serve any time is audacious in itself, which makes me go, 4 years is not long enough. This man has not learned his lesson. He does not feel remorse. He is not sorry. And he is going to continue to use the power that he's been using for decades to get his way. And I feel like, yes, thank God it was not 11 months like they were asking for. 4 years still seems like a little bit of a slap on the wrist.
Claudia King.
Totally agree with what Holland said, and I think the defense really fumbled the ball today because they came in with that hubris and conceit with the PR video and the speaking engagements already lined up. It seems like they really thought they could escape accountability and he was going to walk out today or in a couple days or a couple weeks. So I think it does feel a little light, but what it gives Diddy is the chance to walk the walk because he claims he's reformed. He claims he's learned his lessons. So let's let him show us that while he's behind bars. And if he does that, he can come out and maybe turn the corner and be a better man.
Josh Colesrud, was justice served today in New York?
Absolutely. Given the lackluster performance of the prosecution, the judge gave a great sentence. From the very beginning of the case, the prosecution came at P. Diddy with everything that it had, and it was rejected by a jury. And today it was rejected by a judge. They literally asked for 20 years on one theory and then 11.25 on another. Meanwhile, the defense had decent arguments that the average sentence for most people that are charged with these offenses is around 15 months in prison. So him receiving 50 months in prison is actually 2 or 3 times greater than the average. Now, I know that 50 months is what's catching the headlines, but I'll tell you, as a federal criminal defense attorney, it's not going to be 50 months. He's going to qualify for the First Step Act. He's going to join what's called the RDAP program, the Residential Drug Treatment Program, get another 12 months off. He's already getting 13 months time served. So he's really looking at a release date early to mid next summer.
Wow. Okay. With that in mind, Holland Reed, is there a road to redemption for Diddy in the public? And I started the show, I talked about Mike Tyson, what a turnaround it's been for him and where he stands now and the way people like him and what he's done with his life from that point forward. What about Diddy?
You know, it's funny, I wrote a note on that when you were speaking in your opening arguments. The truth lasts longer in 2025. With Mike Tyson, he had the luxury of the truth kind of just dissipated over time, and we did not have the technology and the videos and the phones and the records that we have now. So it is an uphill battle for him. I do think that he is going to take charge of his own narrative because he is a control freak. He's going to maybe have his team paint his redemption story as how he did today in his statement. It was about himself. It was about all these programs he's trying to start. It was not about the actual crimes that he committed or the hurt and the pain that he's caused. It was about him, I, me. So I think that while it might be an uphill battle in the public perception, he does have the power, the tools, and still the support from a lot of people in the industry and in the world that are still fans of his that will stay behind him if he does, as Claudia said, walk the walk. He's got to walk the walk now because nobody's going to believe it otherwise. And so that's what I feel like is going to happen after all of this is hopefully not next year, Jesus. But sorry. But hopefully he'll serve his time. And yes, sorry.
Claudia, when I think about what this was really all about, there seemed to be this obsession for these freak-offs, right? That really became the centerpiece of what this was all about, these freak-offs. And it's probably about power, it's about control, it's about what's inside him. Do you think he gets beyond that? Do you think he's able to put those in the rearview mirror and not be tempted? Because he's still gonna have hundreds of millions of dollars. He's still gonna have people who are gonna wanna be close to him. And my guess is he'll probably end up continuing in the entertainment industry in some form in the future.
Yeah, getting rid of that drug addiction is one thing, and that's really, really difficult. But that power addiction, that is a whole other level. And we've seen what he can do when it comes to power and control and domestic abuse. That's going to be really difficult for him to overcome. And my fear is that when he comes out and he has all these resources again, he's going to potentially return to that behavior of power and control. He showed it even today with the video and the speaking engagements that are already set up. So I think he can do it. I hope he does it, but I think he's got a very tough road ahead of him.
All right, Josh, is it the role, like if you're his attorney, right, and you're kind of, guiding him through this whole process from the beginning now, seemingly the end, does it end now? Or if he gets out, does a lawyer sit down with him and say, listen, there's going to be eyes on you. You've got to change your life, or is it not your place to go there?
Well, it absolutely is. He's going to be placed on 5 years of supervised release. And if I'm his attorney, I'm going to tell him, number one, we're going over all the conditions here, and you better follow everything here because you're going to be under a microscope. Now, let's also remember that he is a huge player in the R&B and rap industry, and that lauds this type of action anyway in their lyrics. I don't think this is going to affect his music in any way whatsoever, unfortunately, because this is what they rap about. I mean, remember Snoop Dogg and Murder Was the Case that they gave me? I mean, he made millions of dollars based on that alone. So I don't think this is going to affect his career at all.
Holland, I mean, the things that came out during this trial were, you know, beyond, I don't even know how to describe it, but everybody knows. Everybody knows every detail about what he was doing, what he was into. Does that kind of go to the wayside, or does that kind of follow him wherever he goes? And how do you think that is received by the public and by other folks in the industry?
I think I'm going to view that as you have these three parts. You have your artistic life, which he was saying, yes, these are things that people rap about, sing about, and that's one, facet. Then you have your public life, and that's how you present to the world, and that's where you get your brand deals. That's where you get, your Ciroc deals that he had. That's where you become a business mogul. But then you have your personal life, which can involve kink, which clearly, as you said, we all saw. I think those three things, because they all collided together with this case, are going to be trivial moving forward for him, because we now see that, you're a business mogul and you're a genius and you bring people up and you establish such a way in the music industry to be this mogul and this monument in the industry, but you're also an abuser. You're also a drug-fueled, unhinged CEO. And then also over here, your artist and your rap, is that true? Is it not true? I think that unfortunately for him, he was not able to keep those things separate. And as Claudia said, that uphill battle, that long road ahead is what we're talking about. Yes, he can rap about it all day. That's freedom of speech. That's his artistic, behavior. But when it becomes a crime, that's the battle that he's going to continue to face. And that's what's going to cause, I think, the business side of all of this to kind of maybe crumble and fall along the way. Yeah. Or continue to.
And Claudia, he's not a 30-year-old guy anymore. He's I don't know how old he is. I think he lies about his age, but he's like my age. I mean, he could, scale down just a little bit, retire and spend time with children and grandchildren, and not worry about making another $1 billion. Do you think that's a possibility here, or is that impossible?
I think that's what we hope for, but I don't think that's who he is. I think he's got to be in the spotlight. He wants to be the person who's running everything, like Holland said, and I just don't think that piece of him is going to be let go. So while I would love to say he's going to come out and just live that quiet life and talk to people at a nonprofit, I just don't think that's the Diddy that we see here, and I don't think he can do that.
All right. Well, let's hope he does, and he stays out of trouble, and there's no more victims. Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about this tragic story out of New Jersey. 2 teenage girls, 17 years old, just riding their bikes, taken out by a black SUV. Prosecutors say it was driven by another 17-year-old, and folks in the neighborhood are saying that 17-year-old was stalking one of the girls. This is 17-year-old Maria Niotis and her best friend, 17-year-old Isabella Salas. And they were on Monday around 5:30 in Cranford, New Jersey, riding their e-bike when a black SUV struck them. Now, you might think, oh, this was some sort of an accident. Well, the driver of the SUV fled the scene. So is it a simple accidental hit and run? Well, that's not what investigators believe happened here. That's not what relatives of the two girls believe as well. There's a 17-year-old suspect who's been arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. You're not charged with first-degree murder for an accident, okay? If prosecutors believe it's an accident, it's going to be something much less. Here, it's first-degree murder. Friends, family, other folks in the neighborhood have all been speaking to local media about this suspect having been stalking one of the young girls. Next development, a teenage live streamer who many believe is the suspect accused in this case addressed the rumors in a video on YouTube. This is after the two girls are killed. He also spoke about threats that his family members were getting. Here's what he posted on his YouTube channel, Vinny Bat 118.
In a neighboring town, unfortunately, two girls were killed in a hit-and-run crash. I wish my sincerest condolences to those two girls. Making threats against my family will not be tolerated. My cousin has received hateful messages over social media about this whole spiel.
And when he says whole spiel, he means the killing of two innocent girls. That's the spiel, right? So I believe, and we believe, he shares a last name with that cousin who was being harassed about this. That cousin's father, we believe, is the police chief of a neighboring town and lives and is a neighbor of one of the girls in the town where this killing happened. So after the arrest, the police chief from the neighboring town, Westfield, New Jersey, posted a statement on Facebook. Here's what it reads in part. While social media has made it known that the accused is related to me, he is not my son and not a member of my immediate family. I want to be clear, as loud and as firm as possible, that in no way do my wife, children, or I condone, defend, or excuse the actions that caused this terrible and tragic loss of life. So you can see the chief's getting, you know, people going after his family. It has nothing to do with this, his immediate family. Apparently, he may be the uncle of this 17-year-old who may be the live streamer who was talking about this. Now, where are we getting some more of this information from? One of the victims, Maria, her uncle, posted this on Facebook. Here's what it reads in part. My beautiful young niece was killed. The killer followed her to the house for many months, followed by somebody from that school every day and harassing her. And again, this is all the information people are putting together, but because the defendant is 17, he's being treated still at this moment as a juvenile despite the murder charges in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you have to be waived up. That's where I used to practice. The case starts in juvenile court, and then you have to be waived up, and there's an official hearing in order for that to potentially happen. Okay, let's bring back in our think tank. Joining us, Holland Reed, Claudia King, and Josh Colesroot. Claudia, I'll begin with you because a lot of the putting the pieces together here, you've got this police chief from a neighboring town, but he and his officers actually responded to the scene here because these are small New Jersey towns. They help each other out. What are your thoughts about this case, if in fact there is some history of stalking or harassment prior to what happened here?
You know, we were just talking about hubris and conceit with Diddy, and if this kid is the one who is the accused that made that video, calling it a spiel is the conceit that we were just discussing. This is crazy. It sounds like whoever committed this crime was going about 70 miles an hour in a 25 zone, hit these young ladies, left the scene. It's absolutely horrible. And if there was stalking involved, I think that's how we got to this first-degree murder charge, because it does seem like there's more to the story and there is some type of relation between the victim and the suspect that caused this whole event.
Yeah, and Josh, when you listen to the entire live stream, again, which is after the two girls are killed, he talks about, the live streamer talks about the prior contact and issues, the ongoing issues. I guess there were accusations against him, perhaps for the harassment, for other things. He didn't get into details about it, but how important is all of that in conjunction with what happened to the two girls, if in fact this is purposeful conduct, and it sounds like it's 70 miles an hour, and then leaving the scene?
Well, you know, if I'm his attorney, I am furious that he would do something like this when, number one, the prosecutor is trying to establish identity, you know, who is the suspect and perpetrator in this case. And what you didn't hear in that audio recording was, it wasn't me. I had nothing to do with this. You didn't hear that. All you heard was that there's more to the story, which tells me that he knows that there is a story. So, I mean, that pretty much establishes that he's the suspect. And then you have the flight. And you can always get a jury instruction that says that you can infer consciousness of guilt when someone flees the crime scene, which is what happened here, coupled with what Claudia said, that if this kid was really stalking these females, there are reports that the neighbors saw him outside of their house in that black Jeep, and that he had been identified before as harassing them. He's in a lot of trouble. And hopefully the prosecutor is going to upgrade this to an adult felony very soon.
Holland Reed, the real tragedy here, again, it seems like if this harassment is happening and this stalking is happening, like the writing was on the wall. And these are the ones that break my heart so much, because what can a 17-year-old girl do to protect herself? I mean, there are some limitations. Even if you have a piece of paper, the piece of paper is not going to stop someone who's driving, you know, this truck at you while you're riding a bike.
Vinny, you just took the words out of my mouth. As someone that has been stalked before, as an adult, that piece of paper doesn't do much. These people, the social media is a double-edged sword, right? It gives those bar muscles. His statement, again, the arrogance of it, the audacity of it is tragic into itself. But there's this desensitized kind of mentality that happens in situations like this with people that feel like they can do whatever they want and not get caught or not have to, you know, pay the price for that. That piece of paper, I'm going to say this to your viewers and to anybody, even though there's not much we can do, document, report, even if, you know, it doesn't maybe end your way. Unfortunately, God bless the families in this tragic loss, but you still take the power back and do not give those bar muscles, social media muscles, or the audacity that he has to the person, to the perpetrator.
Holland Reed, thank you so much. Claudia King, Josh Colesrud, great to have you all here. When we return, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, she was the trusted au pair until blood stained the walls of her lover's home. Now, after pleading guilty, she's set to reveal the dark secrets behind the deadly affair that ended in murder in the trial of her former lover. Will the jury believe her? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
4 dead students.
None of it seemed to make any sense.
He was evil.
What devastation.
All I can do is scream.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at what we have. New video of the accused Charlie Kirk assassin. Let's take a look at it. This video is from when they were still searching for the shooter the day afterwards. This is at a gas station in Cedar City, Utah. You can see there's a gray Dodge Challenger, same vehicle that he's driving. Probably got to drop those words so we can see everything. And you can see that he's wearing a maroon-colored shirt and a dark-colored hat, which would be the same outfit. Take a look at him. Same outfit that he was wearing the day of the shooting. All right, folks, take a look at your screen. We have a child who is missing tonight who needs your help. Take a close look. This is Joshua McHenry, 16, missing out of Tulsa. Make the call, make a difference. Let's see if we can get Joshua to a safe place tonight out there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Don't go anywhere. Of another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.